Am I in the wrong for striking a strange man with my palm, breaking his nose because he tried to initiate awkward conversation with me? I'm 21, a female, and I went to my local grocery store the other day to pick up a couple of items before heading home. As I was gathering my groceries from different aisles, I noticed a man, probably between 45 and 55 years old, following me quite closely. You might think it was just a coincidence that he wanted something from that aisle, but he didn't pick up anything or even look at the shelves. He didn't have a cart either. For context, I was wearing a dress, not overly short, but short enough for a 90-degree day. Feeling uncomfortable, I decided to check out and leave. I didn't see the man again until I was almost at my car. He approached me and attempted to make small talk, asking about my age, commenting on the fact that my license plate was from a different state, and inquiring if I had a boyfriend. I told him I wasn't interested and asked him to please leave me alone. Instead of backing off, he moved closer. I have a significant aversion to being cornered in small spaces due to past trauma, so I raised my voice and said, "Please back away from me, I don't like this." He laughed and mockingly said, "Oh, she's upset. What a sweetheart," while standing just 3 feet away from me. In a panic, I slammed the palm of my hand into his nose, breaking it. He began screaming at me, but I was in the midst of a panic attack and just got into my car and drove away. I shared the incident with some friends, and opinions were divided. Some said I was in the wrong because I could have just walked away, while others argued that my reaction was completely normal for someone with trauma. So, am I the bad person here? One comment read, "You did well, you taught that creep a valuable lesson and may have saved other women from his advances." Another reply noted, "I haven't heard someone use the word creep since my mother passed away 15 years ago, it was her favorite term for someone like that." Others chimed in, saying that my friends who criticized my actions were the real problem. They suggested that people like to think they would never be victims and often blame or criticize the reactions of those who are victimized. I recalled a time when I was in a similar situation. I was buckled into the driver's seat, wearing a winter coat, with my window down to get gas in New Jersey. The attendant was being creepy, and when I handed him the money, he grabbed my hand and leaned in for a kiss. All I could do was slap at him with my free hand and scream until he laughed and walked away. Many people had opinions on what I should have done: punch him, throw coffee at him, or magically have a weapon on me. But I was stuck in my seat, wearing a bulky coat, with the steering wheel in front of me and a man leaning in through the window. Slapping, screaming, and hitting the horn were my only options. When someone haughtily told me that this is why they carry a knife, I pointed out that if it's in their waistband or pocket, reaching for it while wearing a coat and buckled in, with someone holding your hand, is nearly impossible. Everyone seemed to think they could do better. The only advice I received that made sense was from my dad, who said I should have gouged his eyes out. A thumb in the eye would have been more effective than my slapping, but most people were just trying to figure out how I had been foolish enough to find myself in a bad situation, so they could feel safe in their own lives. Now, on to the next story. I was publicly humiliated by my family at my sister's extravagant wedding. Am I in the wrong for peeling back the facade of their ideal family? The crystal champagne flute trembled in my hand as I watched my sister, Isabella, glide down the aisle. The frothy mixture of silk and lace she wore for her wedding was worth more than my annual salary. As soon as I caught sight of my mother's icy glare from the front row, I knew it was a mistake to be there. I was the disappointment, the uninvited sister who dared to attend Isabella's perfect society wedding. I took a seat further back in the grand ballroom, hoping the stunning floral arrangements would shield me from more scathing looks. Then I overheard a stage whisper, "Can you believe she had the nerve to come after what happened at the clinic?" I grasped my husband, Ethan's, hand tightly. It was only his silent support that kept me from fleeing. Our daughter, Lily, who was 6, fidgeted in her Sunday best, blissfully unaware of the tension crack. Cautious composure shattered, my hand moved with the weight of their humiliation in front of my daughter. I stroked her hair gently and whispered, "Some people, sweetheart, aren't capable of real love." My determination grew stronger with each sob that escaped her lips. For 10 years, I had stayed away, swallowing their lies, watching Isabella build her perfect life on stolen dreams and buried secrets. But seeing my daughter cry was the final straw. If they wanted to talk about betrayal, then it was time to show them what real betrayal looked like. I had everything to prove and nothing left to lose. The drive home after Isabella's wedding felt endless, with tears still glistening on Maya's cheeks as she slept in the back seat. The silence between us stretched like a rubber band on the verge of snapping, and Ethan's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. Finally, he muttered, "You shouldn't have gone," in a quiet voice so Maya wouldn't wake. We had discussed this dozens of times, and social media alerts about the wedding tragedy flashed across my phone screen, making my daughter weep. "Ethan, our daughter is hurting, and whose fault is that?" I shot back, my voice rising. His jaw clenched as he replied, "You knew exactly what would happen." He made a left turn toward us, and I could feel the tension in the air. "You wanted it to happen, perhaps because there was truth in it." The charge of his words was more painful than I had anticipated. "Pull over, Ethan. Pull over right now." He steered the car into an empty lot, moving between faded parking lines. I fled in search of air that wasn't dense with unspoken words. My sweaty skin felt frigid against the twilight air, and Ethan left the car running for Maya as he followed me outside. "Talk to me. What's really going on?" he urged. I laughed, brittle and strained. "Did you see her face? The way she looked at me? You never wanted to discuss it before." I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "Isabella told everyone why I was disowned. You know what she said? She told them I stole from the clinic and embezzled money meant for patient treatment. And now she's working right next to our father." I halted, not wanting to delve deeper into the painful memories. Ethan's expression was filled with worry as he approached me, but I wasn't ready to share everything. Just then, my phone buzzed with a message from an unidentified number. "I understand exactly what happened 10 years ago. Meet me at 2 p.m. tomorrow for coffee on Carson Street." Ethan's hand on my shoulder made me jump. "What aren't you telling me?" I sent him the message, and his stance grew gloomy. "It could be a trap. Your family may not be my family anymore." I turned to face the car again, feeling the weight of the situation. Someone at the clinic knows something, someone who was there when everything fell apart. He grabbed my arm, concern etched on his face. "And you're just going to meet this mystery person after what happened today? Think about Maya. Think about us." I stepped back a little, my resolve hardening. "I am thinking about us. That's why I have to do this. They embarrassed our daughter, Ethan. They made her doubt everything about who she is and who I am. This is about revenge. This is about truth." Through the car window, I saw Maya sleeping peacefully, oblivious to the turmoil surrounding her. Isabella had built her entire life on lies, the clinic, her marriage to Julian, her reputation, all constructed on what she had stolen from me. I recognized the look in Ethan's eyes. He was listening but also nervous. "What exactly are you hoping for?" he asked. I locked my gaze with his and replied, "Nothing yet, but if someone is finally willing to talk, I need to know if you're really with me, not just standing on the sidelines while I fight this battle alone." He observed me quietly for a moment before saying, "You're different tonight. There's something in your eyes I haven't seen before." I moved closer, taking his hands in mine. "Maybe it's because I finally see things clearly. Remember when we first met? You mentioned I was carrying too many ghosts. You were right. But, Ethan, they were monsters dressed in my family's faces, and I let them haunt me for too long." As we were swept by the headlights of a passing car, Ethan's face reflected understanding. In that moment, he hugged me tightly and whispered, "I'm with you," into my hair. "But we do this cleverly. We do this right. No more improvised confrontations." I breathed in his familiar scent, gaining strength from his solid presence. "Come with me tomorrow to the coffee." Watching me with a hint of terror in her voice, Mrs. Chen knew the gravity of the situation. I stood up, held out an arm, and said, "It's okay. Let my husband drive you home." Liam arrived immediately, assessing the situation and walking Mrs. Chen out. I caught up with old friends, but the tension was palpable. "How is married life?" I asked Isabella when I returned. She answered right away, "Keep your distance from Mrs. Chen. There are some stories buried." I snatched up the USB device, my mind racing. However, it was my father who sent the next message: your place of employment. 1 hour. Come alone. Mrs. Chen loses everything. Something had shifted, and it was obviously dangerous. The trembling in my hands was now anticipation rather than fear. I was stopped at the clinic by my father's secretary, but I pushed past her and entered his office, where Isabella and he were waiting. "Quick, aren't you?" Isabella remarked, but her usual hostess demeanor had vanished. I approached my father across his desk and said, "Enough games. You want to threaten Mrs. Chen? Go ahead. But first, explain something. How many other patients did Isabella kill?" I watched as the color drained from his face. Isabella stepped forward. "You're talking about something else entirely." I noted their reactions. 2013, terminal cancer patient. Wrong dosage. Ring any bells? You've obviously lost your mind, my father retorted. I interrupted him. Funny thing about buried secrets, someone always keeps receipts. I grabbed my phone and played the recording of Mrs. Chen's voice. I wonder what the medical board would find if they heard this. Isabella pressed forward, her facade crumbling as I stepped closer. "You're bluffing. Try me." I turned to face my father. "You destroyed my life to protect her. You framed me for theft and erased me from the family, all to cover her mistakes." He spoke in a cold tone, that which was required. Isabella had promise. "You were always difficult. Complicated." I laughed, the sound harsh enough to make them both flinch. "I'm the only one speaking the truth now. I have evidence." "What do you want?" Isabella asked. I walked over to the door, placing my hand on the handle before hesitating. I smiled, seeing decades of pain solidify into meaning. "What I want is for you both to know what's coming. Every lie, every cover-up, every patient you've put at risk, it all comes out. This time, I'm not the one who vanishes." I ignored their objections as I walked out, armed with enough facts from the USB drive to dismantle their perfect world. The frightened child I once was gone. They should have been terrified of me. Financial documents, fictitious credentials, and patient records splattered onto my laptop screen from the USB stick. With every item, the evidence against my family grew stronger as I answered an email thread from my mother and father. My hands trembled as I turned on the television, revealing Liam pacing in our home office. "You need to see this," I murmured. His jaw locked as he leaned forward to glance over the files. To my own ears, my voice sounded distant. They knew about the other patients, 3 more deaths, all covered up and credited to natural causes or equipment faults. The doorbell rang, and through the window, I saw Julian's expensive car pull into our driveway. I took Liam's arm as he approached the entrance. "Let me take care of this." The confident man from Isabella's marriage was nothing like Julian. His eyes were darkened by deep wrinkles, and his tie was untied. "We must chat, Alara," he said, and with a deliberate lack of invitation, I led him to the kitchen. His wedding band felt like a toy as his eyes swept across my laptop. "Isabella told me what you had," he continued. "Whatever they're presenting to you, who's delivering it?" He ran a hand through his hair and replied, "The medical board investigators. They asked about disparities in Isabella's credentials yesterday." My heart raced, but my eyes remained unfocused. "I haven't contacted any investigators," I said. "Don't lie to me," he said, his voice breaking. "I know what she did. What they all did. I've been reviewing the clinic's records since the wedding, and I can't. I have evidence too, things even you don't know about. But if this gets out, it won't just destroy Isabella and your parents, other good people are involved, just following orders." My phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "An anonymous complaint regarding probable maltreatment in your house just arrived at your daughter's school. CPS has been notified." Panic rose in the room, carried decades of trained dominance as he asked, "Are you satisfied? This is just the beginning, Alara. Walk away now, or tomorrow it's her school calling with concerns about her home life." Quietly, I ended the call. My hands trembled as I packed Maya's favorite stuffed animal, her clothes, and her cherished photo album into her overnight bag. Liam's sister, Claire, arrived precisely 1 hour later, looking scared and bewildered. "It's just for a few days, like a holiday with Aunt Claire," I said to Maya as she woke up. "But what about Daddy? What about you?" she asked, her eyes wide with concern. I hugged her tightly, breathing in her comforting aroma. "We'll fix everything, I promise." After they left, the house felt like a tomb. I poured myself a glass of water, but before I could take a swallow, there was a pounding at the front door. Isabella stood on my doorstep, her face smudged with mascara. "They are going to kill you," she exclaimed, pushing past me as she hastily examined the doors and windows. I overheard them talking. "Father hired someone. They're making it look like a break-in gone bad. Why are you showing me this?" I asked, my heart racing. "Because Mrs. Chen was my friend too," she said, her voice cracking. "I cannot have another death on my conscience." For the first time in years, I genuinely looked at my sister. The perfect facade had fallen apart, revealing a person who was equally damaged as I was. "Additionally, Julian left me," she added, taking hold of my arm. "The medical board revoked my license. Everything's falling apart, and they're just worried about protecting themselves, like they always have. You have to run right now. Take what you can." The headlights brushed against the windows, and Isabella stopped. "They're here," I told her, urging her to get out the back as I made my way to my laptop. 2 minutes is all I need." "Alara, go," she shouted. I instantly uploaded everything to several secure servers. The front door shattered beneath the weight of powerful boots just as she vanished. 2 men entered, their faces turned away, exuding the same cold efficiency my father always praised in his business dealings. "This can be easy or difficult, Mrs. Collins," the taller guy said kindly as they approached. I looked aside, buying myself seconds. "My father sends his greetings. The Millers send their sympathies over your terrible accident." A clicking sound caused them to turn. Isabella held her phone, declaring, "I'm live streaming everything." The men exchanged glances, and in that moment, I sprang toward the front door, but the shorter one grabbed me. My face erupted in pain as he hit me. I saw Isabella moving toward the man through blurry vision. "Run," she cried out. I staggered onto the street, blood filling my mouth, my ears ringing. Behind me, glass broke, but I couldn't tell if it belonged to her or to me. She let out another scream, and the lights flashed on in the neighbors' homes. An automobile engine roared to life somewhere nearby. Professional to the last, the men left my residence and made their way to their car. Isabella was asleep in the kitchen, her phone crushed close by, but she was breathing. When sirens screamed in the distance, she started to stir. "Did you get it?" she whispered. "The evidence," I replied, pointing out the bruises that were already forming on my face. "Why did you come back?" She caressed her injured lip lightly and said, "Because I remember before they turned us against each other. I remember when you were my big sister, and I miss that person." The sirens approached, and soon there would be questions, remarks, and more lies from our parents. Liam remained in prison, and Maya had left everything behind. All I had constructed was in ruins around me. However, what my older sister Isabella said struck a chord within me. I felt something, not forgiveness, not yet, but it touched something deep to know that we had both been manipulated by our parents and turned against one another for their own purposes. "We have to end this," I said as the kitchen walls were illuminated with red and blue lights. "Not just expose them, but destroy them completely." As Isabella gazed at me, I saw my sister instead of my enemy for the first time in decades. I took hold of her hand, and we both felt the weight of our own wounds and our shared tragedies. We were like that, bloodied but unbowed. When the police showed up the following day, we were finally together against the real demons in our lives. The officers began asking questions, and I felt a surge of determination. The story assumed our parents would prevail, their darkest hour transforming into their ideal family fantasy. The Miller Family Clinic's annual charity banquet served as our battleground. Isabella and I watched our parents work the room separately, acting as though nothing was wrong and that they hadn't attempted to have me killed the previous week. Mrs. Collins, one of the board members, said, touching my arm, "Surprised to see you here given the circumstances." Using our mother's perfect social mask, I smiled. I wouldn't miss it. Father reached for the podium across the room. Welcome, everyone. Tonight we honor 30 years of serving our community. Isabella indicated that everything was prepared from near the AV stand. I reached for my phone. Liam's attorney had confirmed that Father's accounts offered concrete evidence of financial malfeasance and that the charges against him had been dropped. I'd like to share a video highlighting our clinic's achievements, Father added. Instead of the planned presentation, security footage took the stage as the lighting grew darker. The audience watched in shock as clips played of Father counting money at his job, and Mother threatening to alter patient records with Mrs. Chen. Each clip was completely damning, dated, and recorded. Shock rippled through the room as the audience gasped. Even though Father fumbled with the microphone, his voice was overpowered by the sound of him giving the command to beat me. Turn it off. Mother screamed, but Isabella held the door of the AV booth closed. I moved forward, my words echoing over the stunned silence. 30 years of fraud, corruption, and murder, is this what we're celebrating? Security! Father shouted, but the hired officers remained still. They were working for me tonight. I took a step toward the podium. Just like the private investigators watching you, the forensic accountants tracking your bribes, and the lawyers building cases for every family you've destroyed. Mother's cool demeanor broke as she lunged at me. You unappreciative. Careful, Mother, Isabella interjected, appearing from the throne. The press is recording this right now. Anonymous reporters captured every remark in every scene, and cameras flashed. Father's face twisted in rage as he asked, "You planned this together?" "My own daughters," I said, my laughter piercing like shattered glass. "Everything I did was to protect this family. You tried to kill me last week. You framed my husband. You threatened my child." With brutal fingers, he seized my arm. "Let her go," Isabella said in a firm, steely voice. "Or I'll tell them about Jason." Father froze. "What? The patient from 2011? Isabella replied, purposefully staring at him. "Except it wasn't the equipment, was it? It was you trying to cover up a mistake that would have cost you everything. You blamed equipment failure," Mother said in a shaky voice. Isabella answered, "I found the actual records." Her voice trembled slightly. "You never protected me because you loved me. You did it because you needed someone under your control, the ones you kept to blackmail." The manufacturer realized that too. This time, actual police officers entered the ballroom. Father shoved me away as he saw them and ran for the door. "Julian!" My surprise ally tripped him before he had taken 3 steps. The chamber reverberated with the sound of shackles snapping into place as Father lay sprawled on the marble floor, while Mother fought her own arrest, shouting a long list of denials and obscenities. "Mark Miller, you are under arrest," the investigator said, then read him his rights. "You're charged with conspiracy to commit murder and fraud." I wasn't listening, though. I saw their masks irreparably broken and their utopia crumbling. My arm slid across Isabella's. "You're free now," she remarked quietly. I continued to yell against the accusations of being unappreciative as I watched Mother being hauled away. However, I felt a strange weight lift, a future emerging in which I was no longer under their control. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.